2176 The final moments of the immortal monarch's life.
There are more sealed eternals in the nine heavens.
Yuan muttered in a daze.
Of course, since we cannot kill each other, the nine heavens is the perfect place to seal each other,
said Mu Xuelian, relaying Shiva's words.
Eternals cannot kill each other? That's the first I've heard of it.
Yuan remarked.
It isn't a law that binds us.
Shiva explained.
It's simply that none of us possesses the capability to kill another eternal. The most we can manage is to cast one another into a deep slumber or seal each other away.
She continued. A sudden flicker of realization crossed Yuan's face, and he murmured softly.
I remember. What? I remember the end of the immortal monarch's life.
Yuan sighed, his gaze distant as he recalled the final moments of the immortal monarch's life. The immortal monarch, with the 9 divine supremes by his side, fought against several eternals. Despite their seemingly overwhelming prowess, they were only able to put the eternals to sleep, and it came at a heavy cost. The devastation of their battle had shattered the divine heavens, dividing them into the 9 heavens and giving birth to earth, which drifted unfathomably far away. Moreover, the immortal monarch and several of his companions perished as a result. It's been a long time since their slumber, those eternals should be waking up soon, and when that happens, the 9 heavens will become chaotic again.
Shiva, I must ask, why are the eternals so interested in the 9 heavens? Aren't you guys the most powerful beings in the universe? Why pay attention to a small world like ours? I doubt we have anything worth your attention.
Shiva smiled faintly and said.
You're right. The 9 heavens has nothing that could capture our interest. That is why eternals pay no heed to the world itself, but rather to what lies hidden within it. What is hidden within the 9 heavens? A treasure? Do we have a treasure that's powerful enough to capture even eternals' attention?
Yuan turned to Shiva for an answer. However, Mu Xuelian merely shook her head and said.
Lord Shiva said she's not going to tell you. What? Why not? You already revealed so much. She said she doesn't want more competition. Competition? So you're after this treasure as well?
Yuan's eyes narrowed. His voice hardened as he continued.
Then let me warn you clearly. If you do anything that might harm the 9 heavens, I will stop you myself, just as I did with the eternals I cast into slumber.
Mu Xuelian's eyes flickered as Shiva took control.
You put eternals to sleep before? I'm very intrigued. Tell me more.
She said with a chilling smile on her face.
I'll tell you if you tell me what you're looking for.
He said. Shiva sighed and returned control to Mu Xuelian without uttering a word, a clear refusal to his demands.
Don't tell me then. I'll figure out eventually, anyway.
A human putting eternals to sleep? How ridiculous. Shiva sneered inwardly. Sometime later, they finally left White Hell's territory.
So this is the world beyond White Hell.
Mu Xuelian gazed at the endless greenery stretching toward the horizon, her face brimming with wonder and astonishment, resembling Shimeli when she had first stepped out of the ancient dragon city.
Is this your first time outside?
Yuan asked. She nodded.
Besides the tribe chief, we can only leave White Hell when we look for partners. Is there a particular reason such a rule exists?
Yuan asked. Mu Xuelian answered calmly.
My mother said it's tied to our physiques. While we possess a body that can endure and even flourish in extreme cold, the moment we leave such conditions, our strength begins to wane. If we remain outside for too long, our bodies will deteriorate, and eventually we would cripple ourselves and die a painful death.
Yuan looked at her with raised eyebrows and said.
Doesn't that mean you won't be able to follow me for too long?
After a moment of silence, Mu Xuelian continued in a dazed voice.
According to Lord Shiva, that is no longer the case, as she just fixed the physique's weakness as a reward for our loyalty, so we can leave without worry now. Also, as the chief's daughter, my physique is different, so that weakness was never a problem for me.
Is that so? Sometime later, Yuan said.
Let's stop by a city first, so I can think about our next steps. Didn't you already decide to visit the Primordial realm?
Mu Xuelian asked.
Yes, but the Primordial realm isn't a place you can just visit as you please. It's a heavily protected place. Also, I don't know where it's located, so I will need to acquire the directions first. Okay.
After reaching a city, Yuan found a restaurant and settled in a private room to eat his fill while quietly pondering his next steps. Naturally, he ordered the entire menu.
I ordered every dish on the menu, so you can pick whatever you want to eat?
Yuan said to Mu Xuelian, who silently nodded with a dazed look on her face. When the dishes were brought out, Mu Xuelian's eyes widened and her mouth fell open in astonishment at the colorful array before her. In White Hell, they could only eat the meat of magical beasts they hunted themselves, prepared in the simplest of ways, a far cry from the vibrant feast laid out before her now. Without hesitation, she began trying every single dish on the table. Seeing how much Mu Xiulian was enjoying the food, Yuan ordered the entire menu for a second time. Of course, it wasn't just the two of them. Yingzi, Feng Yuxiang, and Lan Yingying also came out to eat shortly later. Mu Xiulian stared at the three who appeared like ghosts with a dumbfounded look on her face.
Who are they? And where did they come from? Oh right, I hadn't introduced you to my companions yet.
Thus, Yuan began their introduction the very next moment. 2177 Dusk Intelligence.
My name is Feng Yuxiang. As you can probably guess from my aura, I am a phoenix, and I am the young master's most loyal and #1 servant.
Feng Yuxiang introduced herself first. Lan Yingying went next.
I'm Lan Yingying. I'm also a beast, a divine serpent. Yingzi, they're all your servants?
Mu Xiulian asked Yuan. He shook his head and said,
Although Feng Yuxiang and Lan Yingying are bound to me through a contract, I don't see them as servants. They're my precious friends and companions. As for Yingzi, she's just following me around as a traveling companion. Is that so? I'm Mu Xiulian. Nice to meet you all.
While they dined, Feng Yuxiang asked,
Young master, if you don't know where the primordial realm is, why don't you just ask those guys from the celestial overlords?
Yuan shook his head and sighed.
No, I cannot get them involved. They will also try to persuade me not to go. Anyway, I'll probably have to find an information broker. Oh right, there's the Dusk Intelligence. Although we're in the 8th heaven, they should also have a branch here.
Feng Yuxiang sighed softly.
I don't want to sound grim, but Xiao Hua's condition is worsening. Lately, she's been moving about more and more in her sleep, as though trapped in pain, or lost in a nightmare she cannot wake from. I'm worried.
Yuan nodded with a solemn face.
That's why we cannot delay our trip to the primordial realm any longer.
Once they finished eating and paid the bill, Yuan began asking around about the Dusk Intelligence. Sure enough, they also existed in the 8th heaven. Several teleportation formations later, Yuan found himself on the other side of the 8th heaven. Rather than being nestled within a bustling city, the Dusk Intelligence Yuan sought was currently hidden away in a remote city, isolated in the middle of nowhere. The atmosphere in this place was much more gloomy and suspicious, almost like Yuan had found himself in a dark alley.
What is your purpose in this city?
The guard of this city questioned Yuan when he got close to the gate.
I'm here for the Dusk Intelligence.
He said.
The Dusk Intelligence, huh?
The guard sighed.
Is something wrong?
Yuan asked.
You see, the Dusk Intelligence in our city has temporarily closed its doors, so nobody can enter. It has been like that for the last 4 years. Did they say their reason for closing? No, they just suddenly closed their doors.
Yuan pondered for a moment before nodding.
Thanks for letting me know, but I'll take a look for myself anyway. Well, I can't stop you. However, the fee for entering this city is a spirit stone enough?
Yuan showed the guard a single spirit stone.
Why yes.
The guard nodded in a daze as he accepted the spirit stone. Yuan and Mu Xiulian entered the city shortly after and made their way to Dusk Intelligence's operating building. Sure enough, when they arrived, the doors to the building were closed. Yet, someone was sweeping the ground outside. Yuan calmly approached the young man cleaning and asked.
I have some business with the Dusk Intelligence.
The young man gave him a brief glance before he returned to focusing on the ground.
Can't you see that the doors are closed? The Dusk Intelligence hasn't opened for 4 years. If it's closed, why are you cleaning it? Because I'm getting paid to do it.
Yuan suddenly retrieved a black medallion from his spatial ring and showed it to the young man.
Is the Dusk Intelligence still closed?
Look here. The young man's throat stiffened at the sight of the black medallion in Yuan's grasp.
TTH, that's the... Since you recognize this medallion, you must also be part of Dusk Intelligence.
The young man immediately dropped his broom and bowed to Yuan.
Please forgive me for my rudeness. I wasn't aware of your identity. Forget it. Is the Dusk Intelligence really closed?
Yuan asked.
Please follow me.
Without offering an explanation, the young man began walking away. Yuan silently followed him to the back of the building, where another door was located. The young man knocked on the door.
What is it?
A cold voice resounded.
The God of War has arrived. What?
The door instantly swung open, and a middle-aged man walked out to confirm Yuan's identity.
Welcome, God of War. Please, we have been anticipating your arrival.
The middle-aged man said.
You've been anticipating my arrival?
Yuan raised an eyebrow at his wording. The middle-aged man nodded and said.
You'll understand in a few minutes. Please come inside.
Yuan quietly nodded and entered the building. Once they were inside, the middle-aged man brought Yuan to the top floor, where a teleportation formation existed. Not only that, it was already activated.
What's this?
Yuan questioned.
The gateway to the Shadow Army's hideout,
Answered the middle-aged man without an ounce of hesitation in his voice.
The commander is waiting for you. The commander, Dongyi. That is correct. All right.
Without hesitation, Yuan stepped onto the teleport formation and disappeared from the building. When Mu Xuelian tried to follow, the middle-aged man hastily stopped her.
Wait a second. Who are you? And what is your relationship with the god of war? We weren't expecting extra company. I'm someone who will be carrying his child in the future.
Mu Xuelian calmly responded.
Why, you must be his wife. I apologize.
The middle-aged man hastily stepped aside, allowing Mu Xuelian access to the teleport formation. Without another word, Mu Xuelian stepped into the teleportation formation and vanished from the building. When she emerged moments later, she found herself standing in an entirely different city. Yuan was standing right in front of her, and he appeared to be in a daze as he looked at their surroundings.
This place is the city of Xian.
He mumbled, a sense of nostalgia washing over him. A minute later, before they could go anywhere, a figure appeared before them like a ghost.
Welcome to the Shadow Army's hideout, my liege.
Dongyi greeted him with a bow. 2178 Primordial Realms location.
Dongyi, it's been a while.
Yuan returned the greeting with a warm smile.
Indeed it has.
Dongyi nodded.
I heard that you've anticipated my arrival.
Dongyi smiled and said.
I knew you'd come here sooner or later. Let's talk somewhere more private, shall we?
Yuan nodded. As they walked through the empty streets of the city, Yuan asked.
Did you create this place? No, I did not. As much as I love the city I grew up in, I wouldn't do something as disrespectful as recreating it without your approval.
Then.
It was created by my liege.
Dongyi revealed, confirming what was in Yuan's mind.
I see. Unfortunately, I still don't have all of my memories as the god of war. It's fine. You'll eventually recall everything. By the way, my liege, who is your new companion? I'm someone who will be carrying his child in the future.
Mu Xuelian calmly responded, repeating what she said earlier.
What?
Dongyi turned to look at Yuan with raised eyebrows. Yuan rubbed his eyes and sighed out loud.
It's nothing like that. She's from the White Hell Barbarian tribe. The White Hell Barbarian tribe? No wonder she looks so familiar.
Dongyi remarked.
You know them? How could I not? Someone from her tribe used to follow you around. I believe her name was Mu Hanyan. That's my grandmother.
Mu Xuelian said.
Unbelievable. To think her granddaughter would be following you after so many years. Is she still alive?
Dongyi asked.
She's still alive.
Mu Xuelian said. Sometime later, as they drew closer to the towering pagoda in the distance, Yuan remarked.
This place is quiet. It's like a ghost town. Ah, that's because most of them are in training. One doesn't become part of our shadow army without extensive training. After all, how do you find these people?
Yuan asked.
From the streets. Most of them are either homeless or orphans. I see. And how do you train them? Believe it or not, this place is where those who have reached the very end of their training curriculum come to train. Naturally, we cannot allow anyone we do not trust to enter,
said Dongyi.
That's why we begin by cultivating their loyalty. Since most of them come from the streets, it isn't difficult to earn their trust. Still, we test them thoroughly for many years. Only when we are certain of their loyalty do we gradually reveal the truth, introducing them to the existence of the god of war and dispelling the false history woven by the previous celestial emperors. Once we are certain they will be able to handle it, we invest our full resources into them, raising their cultivation and instructing them in the Shadow Army's techniques.
Yuan then asked.
What happens to those who fail? What do you think we do with them?
Dongyi asked with a mysterious smile on his face.
I doubt you would do something as stupid as disposing of the failures, right?
Yuan narrowed his gaze at Dongyi. He immediately chuckled and said.
Of course not. I wouldn't have lived this long if I had done such audacious acts behind her back. Anyway, to answer your question, we simply set them free. I have the ability to eat memories, so I take away the memories of those who do not qualify to stay with us. However, it's not like we abandon them afterward, either. We continue to support those who deserve it from the shadows, and those who do not, we simply let them go. How does it work?
Yuan asked, his curiosity piqued.
For example, we have a young boy who failed his training quite early on. After taking away the necessary memories, we send him to a sect we manage, where he can continue his life as a cultivator. Of course, it's not like we forced him on this path, either. We confirm what they want to do in their life before we take their memories. As for the troublemakers who don't deserve our support, We just toss them back into the street where they belong. I see. It's not a perfect system, but nothing in this world is perfect. Most importantly, it helps people in need.
Yuan mumbled with a satisfied smile on his face. Sometime later, they arrived at the pagoda.
Invincible heaven.
Yuan read the grand name of the pagoda hanging by the entrance. Once inside, they were moved to the highest floor, where a throne stood, untouched for millions of years, yet without a single speck of dust upon it.
Please, my liege.
Dong Yi gestured toward the throne. Yuan stepped forward and seated himself upon it, his gaze sweeping through the open windows that offered an unobstructed view of every corner of the city. Mu Xuelian gazed silently at Yuan. The instant he sat upon the throne, a profound and innate aura of dominance surged from him, stirring within her an almost irresistible urge to bow in reverence. Tears streamed down Dong Ye's face, and in that moment, he looked like a child who had finally been reunited with his parents after being lost for countless years.
Dong Yi, do you know why I visited the Dusk Intelligence?
Yuan suddenly asked. Dong Ye's expression immediately turned serious as he nodded.
Does it have something to do with the primordial realm?
Yuan nodded.
I want to know where it's located.
Dong Yi then said.
Do you know the place called the Primordial Chaos?
Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly at this familiar name.
Of course. Just like White Hell and the Vanishing Valley, it's one of the forbidden zones. Don't tell me the primordial realm is in such a dangerous place. The primordial chaos is not only a forbidden zone, it's the most dangerous forbidden zone, so it's essentially the most dangerous place in the nine heavens. Unfortunately, the primordial realm is inside that place. Fortunately, it's only at the outskirts.
Dong Yi revealed.
How troublesome.
Yuan sighed at this information. 2179 Primordial Chaos, End of Immortal Monarch's Return Arc. The Primordial Chaos was among the most perilous places in the nine heavens, its unique environment cutting cultivators off from spiritual energy. Once their reserves were spent within its depths, they could not recover their strength until they escaped its boundaries. Though the Primordial Chaos was technically part of the nine heavens, only its outermost edges lay within those boundaries. To venture any deeper was to step beyond the nine heavens' protection and into the unknown. Moreover, the creatures that roamed within its depths were all at least of the God Ascension realm.
Although the primordial chaos is a dangerous place, it's not the location that's the most worrying, but the Celestial Emperor's dogs that are protecting that place.
Dong Yi sighed.
It's constantly guarded around the clock by at least 10 God Ascension realm cultivators. 5 of them are at the 5th level God Ascension, and 2 are at the 7th level. 10 God Ascension experts, huh? That is indeed troublesome.
Yuan sighed, wondering how he would get past 10 experts. Seeing his reaction, Dong Yi confidently patted his chest and declared.
Don't worry, my liege. I've spent the last few decades preparing for this exact purpose. The Shadow Army will distract the guards while you enter the primordial realm. Won't that alarm the Celestial Emperor, though? Even if I manage to get inside, getting out is my biggest issue, especially if he causes a scene right outside.
Dong Yi smiled and said.
My liege, you're underestimating how much we've prepared for this moment. I know, I said decades, but in reality, we've been preparing for this moment since the primordial era. What do you think the members of the Shadow Army do when they complete their training? They infiltrate the Celestial Emperor's side as spies. Currently, 3 of the 10 experts guarding the primordial realm are our people. So even if we get rid of the other 7, we won't immediately alert the Celestial Emperor. I see. And how long do you think I have inside the primordial realm?
Dong Yi pondered for a moment before speaking.
The guards at the primordial realm are replaced once every 1,000 years, and it has already been 800 years since the last replacement, so you have about 200 years before the Celestial Emperor is alerted. 200 years? That's more than enough time.
Yuan nodded.
When would you like to depart for the primordial realm?
Dong Yi then asked.
As soon as possible.
Dong Yi nodded and said.
In that case, please give me a few days to prepare for your escort. All right, then I'll go prepare now. If you'll excuse me. Dong Yi.
Yuan suddenly stopped him.
My liege.
Dong Yi turned around with a puzzled face. A warm smile spread across Yuan's face as he said.
Thank you for your efforts and sacrifices through all these years. When our battle is over, I swear upon my soul, I will repay you.
Dong Ye's eyes widened before he immediately dropped to his knees.
My liege, this worthless life of mine has been yours ever since you saved me from the streets and bestowed upon me a purpose. From that day onward, all I have ever sought is to repay you, so there's no need for you to say such words. Even if you say that.
Yuan didn't know how to respond as tears flowed from Dong Ye's eyes. Dong Ye's past mirrored Tian Xian's. Growing up without a family, he spent much of his childhood living as a bandit. If it weren't for Tian Xian, Dong Yi would have been executed long ago. After Dong Yi departed, Yuan rose from the throne and walked to the window. As he drifted into thought, he suddenly became aware of a powerful gaze fixed upon him.
Who are you?
Yuan asked out loud. There was no response, and a moment later, the mysterious individual withdrew their gaze. Yuan narrowed his eyes toward the distant mountain, where a lone silhouette stood upon the peak, gazing unmistakably in his direction. However, this silhouette vanished like smoke before Yuan could do anything, disappearing like a ghost. Yuan felt no concern that the figure posed any danger, as he doubted Dong Yi would allow such a threat into this place. Yet curiosity stirred within him, for the individual's presence seemed even more formidable than Dong Yi's. When Dong Yi returned to his side a few days later, Yuan questioned him about the silhouette.
A silhouette, you say?
Dong Yi swallowed nervously. Yuan looked at him with raised eyebrows.
What's with that reaction? Don't tell me that was an intruder. No, that's not possible.
Dong Yi immediately dismissed that notion. He continued.
I have an idea who you're talking about, but I cannot disclose any information on that individual.
Yuan became even more intrigued after hearing this.
You can't tell me? So that person is even more important than me, huh?
Yuan remarked with a smile. Dong Yi's eyes widened at his statement, and he hastily responded.
Not a chance. There's nobody more important in my eyes than my liege. However, that person's circumstances are unique.
After a moment of silence, Dong Yi sighed and said.
I can tell you this, though. My liege, you are very familiar with that person. I am. Then why are they keeping their distance?
Dong Yi shook his head.
I'm not sure myself, but I'm sure they'll approach you once they're ready. If you say so. In any case, have you finished with the preparations? Yes, we can leave for the Primordial realm at your command. Let's leave now then. Please follow me.
Yuan nodded and followed Dong Yi away. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Shadow Army's hideout, the silhouette mumbled in a longing tone.
Tianyang.
Some time later, Dong Yi led Yuan to their destination, where a carriage awaited them. Yuan's brows rose, not at the carriage itself, but at the flag it bore.
Isn't that the Celestial family's flag?
He remarked. 2180 entering the Primordial realm.
It is the Celestial family's flag.
Dong Yi confirmed with a calm smile on his face.
This way, we'll be able to approach the Primordial realm without being stopped. Impersonating the Celestial family, huh? Most people wouldn't even dream of doing something like this.
Yuan chuckled. Not even madmen would dare impersonate the Celestial family, the most powerful clan in the 9 heavens. For those bold enough to try, death would be the least of their concerns. However, offending the Celestial Emperor was the Shadow Army's specialty.
Greetings to the God of War.
Aside from the carriage, there was a group of God Ascension experts there.
They will not only escort you to the Primordial realm, but will also act as a distraction.
Dong Yi said.
It is an honor to finally be of assistance to the God of War.
They all said, bowing to him. Yuan acknowledged with a nod.
I'll be relying on you guys.
After Yuan and Mu Shuolian stepped into the carriage, Dong Yi swallowed an appearance-altering pill before taking his place at the front as the rider. Moments later, they left the hideout and appeared in a location that was entirely different from the building Yuan had entered from. Then, without hesitation, they soared toward the sky, entering the starry sky hours later.
My liege, it'll take 2 years just to get there, even at our speed. So make yourself comfortable.
Dong Yi said.
All right.
Yuan retrieved the mystic sword tablet to study it. As for Mu Shuolian, she spent most of her time staring out the window with a constant look of wonder, as this was her first time entering the starry sky. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, almost 2 years have passed.
My liege, I should have probably asked you this sooner, but you have the 4 ancient seals, correct? Edo. We're almost at our destination, so if you could, assemble the ancient seals now, so you don't have to do it later. I have to assemble the seals.
The next moment, Yuan retrieved the 4 ancient seals and examined them closely. At first glance, each appeared whole on its own, yet when placed side by side, it became clear, they were fragments meant to fit together into a greater whole. You have assembled the 4 ancient seals, creating an ancient key. Despite its name, the ancient key did not resemble a key at all. If anything, it looked like a large seal stamp. A month later, Dong Yi's voice resounded.
My liege, we're almost at the primordial chaos. Please prepare yourself.
A few minutes later, Yuan realized that the spiritual energy in the air had suddenly vanished. You have discovered primordial chaos. You have entered primordial chaos. For cultivators, a world devoid of spiritual energy was no different from fish stranded without water. Without spiritual energy, once a cultivator's reserves were depleted, their dantian would gradually wither, and given enough time, the cultivator themselves would perish.
I cannot sense any spiritual energy.
Mu Xuelian was not used to such an environment and instinctively began to panic. As for Yuan, Chaotic Dragon Core has activated. You have begun refining chaotic essence. Though the primordial chaos was devoid of spiritual energy, it was anything but empty, and it brimmed with chaotic essence in overwhelming abundance. She remarked after quickly recognizing it. She looked at Yuan and questioned.
Have we returned to the primal expanse?
He shook his head and explained.
No, we're still in the nine heavens.
Ingzi walked to the window and stared outside.
But this feeling, it's the same as the primal expanse.
She muttered. Meanwhile, somewhere in the outer reaches of the primordial chaos, 10 God Ascension Realm experts sat in silent cultivation, encircling a massive black metal door that loomed alone in the desolate expanse. However, since there was no spiritual energy for them to absorb, these God Ascension cultivators were merely doing mental cultivation and not actually cultivating. Suddenly, the expert at the 7th level of God Ascension opened his eyes and spoke out loud.
We have company.
The other 9 opened their eyes at his words.
That flag, the Celestial family. Was there an inspection scheduled for today?
The experts showed no alarm at the sight, for the Celestial family frequently came to inspect the primordial realm.
It might be a surprise inspection. I'll go speak with them,
said one of the 5th level God Ascension experts as he rose to his feet and approached the carriage. Sometime later, the cultivator returned and said,
It's a surprise inspection. Prepare to greet the Celestial family. What a pain in the ass.
One of them complained in a low voice. Soon, all 10 of them left their post and approached the carriage.
We greet the Celestial family.
However, in response, the experts guarding the carriage suddenly encircled them.
What is the meaning of this?
One of them questioned with a deep frown. Still concealed by his disguise, Dong Yi suddenly drew out a treasure and activated it without warning. In the next instant, a massive barrier materialized, enclosing everyone within its confines.
It's an ambush.
After confirming the guards were trapped, Dong Yi turned to the carriage and said,
My liege, you're good to go. We'll take care of things from here.
Yuan and Mu Xuelian emerged from the carriage the next moment and immediately flew toward the metal black door in the distance.
They're here for the primordial realm.
Even upon realizing this, the guards did not panic. Instead, mocking laughter erupted from them.
What a futile effort. Without the ancient key, not even a cultivation god can open the primordial realm.
But the moment they saw Yuan draw forth the ancient key, their laughter died instantly, their faces twisting into shock and horror.
Why does he have the ancient key? Impossible. We must stop him from opening the primordial realm.
The guards erupted with power at once, unleashing the full extent of their cultivation without hesitation.
Kill them.
Dong Ye's commanding voice resounded the next moment. Congratulations, you have finished listening to the current content.